grande vino.
A great wine, in my opinion, is a wine that has a soul. And having a soul means, above all, having personality, being recognizable.
Deve riflettere esattamente.
Perfectly reflecting the characteristics of the place of origin of the wine, and also reflecting the personality of the producer. The wine must manage to give hedonistic and aesthetic pleasure, but also intellectual pleasure. It's a little like a great painting, which means that talking about art and wine is similar.
Good afternoon. I'm Carrie Boyle with Total Wine. I'm excited to share with you today the Total Wine Antinori live webcast event. Here with us today we have Marchese Piero Antinori, the patriarch of 26 generations of winemaking, along with Glenn Salva, the general manager of Antica Napa Valley. We also have Rob Bigelow, master sommelier and Antinori wine educator, who will lead us through today's presentation. I encourage you all to make this an interactive experience and send us questions. You can do that via Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook using the hashtag TWTasting. I will be collecting your questions during the event and passing them on to our panel. We will do our best to respond during the hour that we have, but we'll follow up afterwards for any questions that were missed. With that, I turn the presentation over to Rob.
Thank you so much, Carrie, and welcome everybody. As Carrie said, my name is Rob Bigelow. I'm a master sommelier. I'm the director of wine education in the United States for Antinori. It is my unbelievable pleasure and honor to be here with you today to walk us through and lead the discussion about the unbelievable and storied history of the Antinori family, their iconic wines, and the spectacular vineyards from which they come. It's without a doubt, without question, that Antinori is the first family of wine in Italy. And honored to have on the panel today the Marchese Piero Antinori, who is the president of Antinori and is the 25th generation to lead the company. The Marchese himself is an innovative, land-breaking, or should I say, visionary trailblazer who over the course of the last 4 decades has led not only a quality explosion in the wines of Antinori, but certainly been in the vanguard of forwarding wine quality in Italy itself. So welcome, Marchese. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Rob.
Also on the panel is Glenn Salva, who, as Carrie said, is the estate manager at Antica Napa Valley, which is the Antinori family property here on Atlas Peak in Napa Valley, from where we come to you today in Napa Valley. Glenn actually developed and planted the property back in 1985, brings more than 30 years of vineyard experience to bear on his current role as the estate manager at Antica Napa Valley. So Glenn, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Rob, it's great to be here.
Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. As Carrie said, we really encourage you to share with us through Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter your questions. We really want this to be more of a dialogue than a monologue, so please get those in and we'll do our very best to weave those into our presentation today. And also I encourage you to, as we go through the presentation, be smelling and tasting the wines throughout, because the nuance and wonder of the wines as we go through the tasting, every smell and taste will be different. So if you want to start with the Vermentino from Guado al Tasso, just smelling and tasting, we'll get to that wine shortly, but just really want you to have your nose and your mouth in the wines throughout to experience the wonder and joy of these wines. Also, at your place setting, you have a small tasting note that has a lot of details on each wine. If you want to record any of your tasting notes there, that would be great. We've also provided you with a copy of the great cover of the Wine Spectator from a couple of months ago that has the Marchese and his 3 daughters on the cover. So that is some wonderful information to reference as we go. I guess, Marchese, I'll start by asking you, your family's been making wine in Tuscany since 1385. That's 630 years, 26 generations. Just for point of reference, over 100 years before Christopher Columbus sailed to America, your family was making wine in Tuscany. It's unbelievable and remarkable. What are the guiding principles that have allowed your family business to survive and thrive over these past 6 centuries?
Well, actually, exactly this month, we are celebrating 630 years, because it was in the month of June of 1385 that my ancestor, Giovanni, son of Piero Antinori, an ancestor on a direct line, was admitted to be part of the Florentine Vintners Guild. And since then, I must say that generation after generation and century after century, there have always been at least one member of my family who has been fully involved in this wonderful business we are in, and we are lucky to be in. But there is another thing that I would like to remember, and that is that next year we are going to celebrate another very important event where my family was involved, and this is the first appellation of origin in the world for a wine, which was Cosimo III of the Medici family, who in September of 1716, so 300 years ago next year, enacted a regulation for Chianti, and we can consider this the first appellation of origin in the world. And my ancestor, Niccolo Antinori, was the Secretary of State of Cosimo III Medici. And obviously, being in the wine business, it goes without saying that he was instrumental in writing this regulation for Chianti. So I think that that's an important thing also in my family and for the Italian wine business in general.
So before any of the other important appellations of the world, Rioja or Bordeaux, Chianti, the first one to be observed and regulated and codified by law as
the first in the world.
That's spectacular. That is spectacular. Can you tell us a little bit, Marchese, about the family motto? I hope I pronounced it correctly, Te Duce Proficio?
Yes, it's basically, it's in Latin, a search of excellence all the time. I mean, it goes, we want to go forward to be innovative under your guide, which is God's guide.
Very good. And what can you tell us more about the family's involvement in wine? And I know that the headquarters are at the Palazzo Antinori since 1504 in Florence.
Yes.
Obviously, the majority of the grape growing is centered in Chianti Classico, which is about 20 miles or so south of Florence. The essence and the emotion of Antinori wines in Tuscany is in the Chianti Classico region.
Absolutely. My family started to produce wines in the Chianti Classico region, which is this relatively small region between Florence and Siena, a hilly region, beautiful, I must say, rocky, difficult to cultivate. And there it's where my family, for many centuries, continued to produce wines. Then my father started to expand outside Chianti Classico. He bought a property in Umbria, which is just south of Tuscany, between Florence and Rome, where there is mainly a production of white wines.
And then in my time, in the last 20, 25 years, we expanded also in other parts of Tuscany, like Brunello di Montalcino, Montepulciano, the Bolgheri region, and also outside Tuscany, Puglia, Piemonte. So when I started to be involved in the business, we used to own approximately 60 hectares of vineyard, and now we have over 2,000 hectares of vineyard. But the most important thing is not the number of acres, not the quantity, but it's really the quality of the vineyard that we have, because I must say we are quite lucky, because we own really vineyards in the best places, in the best areas, in the best territories.
Well, speaking of those best territories, maybe we should jump in and start to taste through the wines. The first wine is the white wine. It's the Guado al Tasso Vermentino. Vermentino is the varietal. Guado al Tasso is the estate. It's from the Bolgheri region. Please smell and taste the wine. For me, Vermentino is one of Italy's best white varietals. Characters of white flowers, sweet and tart citrus, minerality, very, very aromatic. Glenn, you've been out to the Guado al Tasso estate. Can you describe where it is and why it's so special?
Well, Piero just mentioned that for the Chianti Classico, it's in a very hilly part of Tuscany or central Tuscany. And for the Guado al Tasso estate, it's located about 60 miles southwest of Florence, but right along the Mediterranean Sea. And it's this natural amphitheater that are formed by the mountains that come down to the sea is where the vineyards of Bolgheri are planted. And as you get closer to the sea, the soils are sandier. And as you get more towards the mountains, they become gravelly. And so it's really, for the Vermentino, it's what grows closer to the sea or more in the sandy soils. Where the Vermentino thrives. And I think for Vermentino, it's a variety that really does its very best grown along the sea. And Bolgheri is just a wonderful place for that.
It's really a coastal grape variety, and it's a native grape variety in that part of Italy. And I must say that personally, I like Vermentino very much because it's grown only there, in that particular area of Italy, in the coast of Tuscany, coast of Liguria, Sardinia, and Corsica Islands. That's the area of Vermentino.
Yes, it thrives beautifully there. And this wine sees no oak. It's just a perfect expression of the varietal, very aromatic, very crisp, very food friendly. And this just in, Marchese, we have our first question.
Oh, good.
So, so while you all are enjoying the stunning Guado al Tasso Vermentino, we have a question for the Marchese from Darian Carmichael. It's sort of a two-part question. I'll give you both parts. What made you decide to go into the wine industry, and was it a choice for you? Did you have any choice?
No, I was not obliged to get into the wine business at all. But for me, it was a normal thing because, since I was very, very young, I started to work in the winery, in the vineyards, maybe, in the summertime. And I think I had it in my DNA, and it was really something that I was certainly not obliged to do it, but I always loved to do it, and it was my ambition to do it. Because and now I don't regret it because it has been really a wonderful life, and I think it's a wonderful type of business we are in, wonderful product. We deal with beautiful areas in the world, beautiful places, and also wonderful people, because the wine community all over the world, it's a wonderful community.
Well, congratulations on making a great choice. I think it's worked out for you quite well. Just lastly on Vermentino, are there, for you, are there other Italian white varietals that are similar to Vermentino? Again, I put it at high in the pantheon of white varietals in Italy. What other white varietals stand out for you that are indigenous or thrive in Italy?
Well, I think that this wine, the style of this wine can be in a way compared with the Pinot Grigio, the good Pinot Grigio, which is not actually an Italian grape variety originally, but it has become in a way an Italian grape variety and now it has become almost an international grape variety. Vermentino is not yet an international grape variety, but I think it could one day become because of the style of this wine. So I think for me, a Vermentino can be something in between Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Grigio. That's how I would define Vermentino.
And I think it's a perfect, for our friends and guests from Total Wine & More, I think it's a perfect summertime wine as it starts to heat up across the country. This is so refreshing and so crisp and aromatic, something you can drink on the porch or have with some light aperitifs. Why don't we move on to wine number 2, which is the La Braccesca Sabazio, which is Rosso di Montepulciano. What can you tell us about this stunning wine?
We bought the estate of La Braccesca 25 years ago. La Braccesca used to belong to a family called Bracci, a noble family of the area. And since then we have tried to develop this estate, which is in a wonderful area of Tuscany, Montepulciano, one of the classical historical wine area in Tuscany, where a wine like Nobile di Montepulciano is produced and has always been produced. But we also produced Rosso di Montepulciano, which is in a way the second wine in the region of Montepulciano. And for me, this is a sort of everyday wine. It's a fresh, fruity wine, very easy to drink. It goes very well with food. You never get tired of. It's not heavy. It's not, you drink a glass and then you want to drink another one, because it's a very friendly type of wine. It's a wine which cannot age for a very long time, but I think 4 or 5 years it's okay, it can age. And we have some Sabazio, because this is the name of this wine. Sabazio is the nickname of Sabatino Lulli, which was a personality in the winemaking history in Montepulciano, and so we have thought that we wanted to give him credit and call this wine Sabazio.
Should be pointed out that this is from a Sangiovese clone varietal. Sangiovese is the grape that is predominant to and thrives best in Tuscany, but is there a slight difference between the Sangiovese of Chianti Classico and that of Montepulciano?
Sangiovese is a great grape variety, in my opinion, very versatile. It can give wines of different style and different types according where the Sangiovese is grown. The main regions are Chianti and Chianti Classico, where the Sangiovese, which is a family, and then with different clones, and in Chianti Classico, historically, it is called Sangioveto. Then there is the Brunello in the region of Montalcino, still a Sangiovese, but a different clone. And then we have the Prugnolo Gentile, which is the name of the Sangiovese grown in Montepulciano, where this wine comes from. Then we have also another region in the southern part of the coast of Tuscany, which is called Morellino di Scanzano. Morellino is the local name for a Sangiovese. So all these wines are slightly different, but not so much because of the difference of the clone, but because of the difference of the terroir where they are grown.
The specifics of the region. To your point, Marchese, I think this wine is young and fresh and just smells of bright red fruit and is very satisfying and easy to drink and just a beautiful and wonderful thing. Well, while we are on Sangiovese, why don't we move along to wine number 3, which is the Villa Antinori Chianti Classico Reserva. What can you tell us about this wine?
Well, the Villa Antinori Chianti Classico is really the celebration of our link of the family with the territory of Chianti Classico. It's a wine which has been produced for many, many years. Who sort of created this wine was my father in the early 1920s, when in the Chianti most of the wines, maybe all of the wines, were bottled in the typical old fiasco bottle, which was the bottle covered with straw.
Yeah.
You can find some of these old bottles still on the market, but my father wanted to produce something a little bit more sophisticated, not only in terms of quality and style of the wine, but also the packaging, the presentation of the wine. And so he decided, I think he was the first in the region, to bottle the wine in the classical Bordeaux bottle, and with a label which was much more sophisticated. And he started to call this wine Villa Antinori. There were all the chateaus in Bordeaux. He wanted to do something a little bit similar, and we, not having a chateau, he called it Villa because. And since then, there are many other wines with the name Villa and obviously other names. So Villa Antinori is a bit the prototype, the first Chianti Classico of a new generation of Chianti Classico. And the wine is produced mainly with Sangiovese because that is what Chianti Classico is produced with, but with a small addition of Cabernet and Merlot, very small addition. And it's produced with grapes which comes from the best vineyards of Chianti Classico that my family owns. Different vineyards, it's not a single vineyard, but it's a combination of the best vineyard that we have. And it's a wine which has been extremely successful, I must say. And it's a bit, I think, the largest selling Chianti Classico in the market.
In the market, by the market you mean the world.
The world.
Okay. And Marchese, I was lucky enough to visit you at the new Chianti Classico cellars in Bargino. Can you tell us a little bit about that spectacular facility?
Yes, it's where this wine actually is produced together with other Chianti Classico that we produce, like Peppoli Chianti Classico and others. It was, we started to produce the wine in the new winery 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, after 7 years of works to build this winery, which was designed by a young Florentine architect called Marco Casamonti. And I think it's a beautiful winery where the technology for producing wine is really state of the art, but it has also been designed in order to receive visitors and to have also people that they want to see where and how a wine is produced. And so we are open to the public, and it has been very successful, I must say, more than we thought, which means that the interest for wine is growing everywhere. And we have also a museum with the history of the family there, a restaurant, and so it's really a sort of even wine lovers' destination now more than before. So we are very pleased about this winery, also because it respects the landscape and the beauty of the Chianti Classico hills and district. And that was really the purpose, to do something which was really respectful of the territory and of the landscape.
And it is certainly that. As you drive by on the freeway or the autostrada, you can barely tell that this facility is there. It's built in beautifully into the hillside. There are vines on top of the roof. It's very harmonious with the environment. It's stunning.
And also the temperature of the wine cellar is perfect, and it's a natural temperature because it has been inside the hill. And also the technique of production is perfect. It's all by gravity, so with no pumps and no violent movements of the wine. We try really to keep everything very soft. Also because we think that it's very important to produce wine with the balance, and with this system of production we are able to produce balanced wine.
Yes, as we find here in the glass with the Villa Antinori Reserva. So just as we're about to transition away, I do want you to take one last smell and taste of this beautiful Villa Antinori Chianti Classico Reserva. This is what Chianti Classico should smell and taste like: red fruits, a generous and giving palate, a long finish. It's just beautiful. So we're at a point now where we're going to make a little transition. In the stores, you should be starting to prepare to empty your first 3 glasses, shift them to the other side of the Tignanello, which is at the top of your tasting mat, and we'll start to pour those last 3 wines as we begin our discussion of the super iconic Tignanello. So stores, if you could help us with that, that would be spectacular. And as we're doing that, here, this just in, I feel like Walter Cronkite or something, from Rich McDonald. Marchese, can you explain just a little bit the difference between Chianti, Chianti Classico, and Chianti Classico Reserva? And now, I guess, Gran Reserva as well.
Chianti is, the generic Chianti is a rather large region. Practically half of Tuscany is covered with the appellation, generic appellation of Chianti. Chianti Classico is the heart of this bigger region and is the historical region where Chianti originally was produced. And it's a small region between Florence and Siena, as I was saying. Very hilly, very difficult to cultivate, but where the best wines of the region are supposed to be produced, and also wines that have an aging potential in Chianti Classico, more than in the generic Chianti. So this is really the main difference between Chianti and Chianti Classico. I think it's very important. Chianti Classico Riserva means that the wine has to be aged for a longer time by law, by regulation, than the regular Chianti Classico. And it has to have a natural alcohol degree a little higher than the other. So there are done some specification, something specific for Chianti Classico Riserva, and normally, obviously, the Chianti Classico Riserva is the best part of the Chianti Classico.
So these are legal definitions that help hone down the quality. So you go from Chianti to Chianti Classico to Chianti Classico Riserva. So it's qualitative. So let's move on to the Tignanello. A memorable moment for me, Marchese, is that when I visited the new facility at Bargino with my team, you were kind enough to have lunch with us at the restaurant Ranuccio 1180, which all of you folks can visit if you come see us at Bargino. But I remember very clearly at that lunch asking you, in your 4 decades at the helm of the company, what you were most proud of. And your answer was short and concise and to the point, and you said Tignanello. Tell us about the wonder of Tignanello, please. And please taste and smell, 'cause this is the wine.
First of all, Tignanello is the historical name of a small, very special vineyard that we are lucky to have in the Chianti Classico region. I sort of created Tignanello in a moment which was quite a difficult moment for the wine industry in Tuscany, and I would say in Italy, for a number of reasons. And we needed to produce a wine which was better in quality, with better reputation, and also better prices of the rest of the wines produced at that time. And so, with the help also of a great winemaker and professor at the University of Bordeaux called Émile Peynaud, who was really a great wine personality, we decided to make some changes in the in respect of the traditional way of producing wines. First of all, we reduced the amount of white grapes that traditionally were used also to produce Chianti, and also in terms of vinification and especially aging, we changed many things, especially in the aging philosophy, because we started to use small barrels of new oak instead of using big barrels of old oak. And we started to age the wine for a shorter period of time in order to have wines always much fresher and much less tired than we used to produce at that time. The result of all that was a wine called Tignanello, because it was coming from that specific vineyard of Tignanello, and the wine was received so well, enthusiastically, not only by the wine expert or the opinion leaders of the world, but even in Tuscany and in Florence, where people were used to the old style of wines, Tignanello was really accepted very, very well. And I think that for me personally, but also for our company and for the wine industry in general in Tuscany and in Italy, Tignanello represents the prototype of a new generation of wines and the beginning of what we call the renaissance of Italian wine. So it has really a very important meaning for us, a wine like Tignanello, which is produced with Sangiovese, basically 80%, and also with 20% of Cabernet Sauvignon Mendi and a little bit of Cabernet Franc. This is how the vineyard is planted.
And I think it needs to be noted that the Tignanello was thought to be the first of the super Tuscans to, come out of this use of the traditional Tuscan varietals only in making Chianti Classico. So you had to label the wine as a vino di tavola. Were you? This was a genius move. But were you also considered by some of the traditionalists in Chianti Classico as a heretic of some sort for introducing these international varietals? Was there some of that from the old guard, or?
It was a bit a controversial wine.
A bit controversial. That's an understatement, I think, Marchese.
Because it was more expensive than the traditional wines, but with the lowest official classification. Vino da tavola,
table wine, the most
instead
basic.
Of being, so that's why it was. But I think it was also a reason why it attracted some curiosity, and I must say that this wine has been the philosophy of this wine has been followed by many other producers, and all together we have started this revolution of Italian wines in general, and so that's why Tignanello has become an icon wine.
So the first vintage was in 1971. We've got a couple questions coming in. One from Burnsville, Minnesota. And I'll give you both parts of the question, Marchese. Does the blend ever change in Tignanello? And part two from Cameron in Bellevue, Washington, which is my home store. How long can Tignanello age? So does the blend change, and how long can it age?
Yes, the blend has changed the second vintage. The first vintage was 71, and in 71 there was no Cabernet in the blend. In 75, which was the second vintage of Tignanello, instead we started to use also the grapes of the vineyard of Tignanello planted with Cabernet Sauvignon, and we started to use approximately 20% of Cabernet, so, actually 15% Cabernet Sauvignon and 5% Cabernet Franc. Since then, the blend every year changes a little bit, 1 or 2% more or less Sangiovese or Cabernet. Because when we say 80% Sangiovese and 20% Cabernet, that means how the vineyard is planted. But then every year, according to the vintage, according to other things, I mean, we can change slightly the percentage of these grape varieties. So it's not a formula that we follow every year, but the vineyard is planted with this percentage, and it can be changed in the wine slightly, maybe 1, 2, 3%.
Depending on what the vintage offers.
What the vintage offers.
And how long can how does Tignanello age, in your opinion?
The Tignanello is a wine which can age definitely for a long time. Sometimes we have the opportunity to taste also the first vintage or the second or the third vintage, so 30, 40 years of age, and I mean they are really still in very good condition. So obviously it depends also on the vintage, but certain vintages, especially I would say the last more recent vintages like 2012, 2011, 2010, I'm sure they will age for 30, 40 years well.
Yes, this one in front of us, certainly. And I think a lot of it has to do with the spectacular nature of this vineyard. The Tignanello Celaya vineyard is one of the most perfect vineyards I've ever seen. Just its aspect, how it faces, and the Albarese rocks that maintain and generate heat. It's just, you know, look up perfect vineyard, and there's a picture of it in the dictionary.
It's very special vineyard also because of the elevation, approximately 1,300 feet of altitude, and that creates a microclimate which is very favorable for great wines. Quite high temperatures during the day in the growing season, but also cool nights, and this excursion of temperature is really very favorable for producing very good wine.
Which leads to the perfection that's in this glass. And Marchese, just let me say, you know, congratulations on pioneering what is today, for me at least, Italy's most iconic and recognizable red wine. This is it right here. So thank you for thank you for taking a risk back in 1971. Okay, thank you. Let's why don't we head back out to the Tuscan coast, to the Guado al Tasso estate where the Vermentino came from, and let's taste the Il Bruciato from Guado al Tasso. What's the story of the Guado al Tasso estate and of the Il Bruciato?
Well, the Guado al Tasso estate is a family estate on my mother's side, and it became an Antinori estate when my father and my mother got married in the early 1930s. it was a big estate originally, then it was divided in two, and one part went to my uncle and aunt, and the other part, the other half, went to my mother and my father. Originally, that part of Maremma, it's called Maremma, it's a sub-region of Tuscany, in the coast, near the coast. It used to be sort of covered with swamps and very unhealthy place to live, but now it has become a sort of paradise for agriculture and also for the wine production. And we have found that under the special climate conditions of the Bolgheri region, it's called Bolgheri, the sort of Bordeaux varietals can give the best results, more than Sangiovese in that part. Sangiovese needs more extreme type of temperature, sort of very cool, cold temperatures in the winter and warm in the summer. In the Bolgheri, due to the influence of the ocean, of the sea, there is a much more mild climate during the winter and maybe a little cooler during the summer. And the Bordeaux varieties can give their best results there. Maybe it's the only place in Tuscany where they can give really very top results. And in fact, there are wines like Sassicaia or Nellaia, Guado al Tasso, that are produced in that specific area. And actually, all three are produced in the family estate, which was then divided, but originally it was one single estate. Bruciato is the name given by wood which was burned. Bruciato means burned because a fire destroyed this wood at the beginning of the century, of the 20th century. And we have a vineyard contiguous to this wood where this wine is produced. The wine is produced with Cabernet Sauvignon, with Merlot, and with small percentage of Syrah grapes, which we produce in that area. It's a wine which has soft tannins, very fruity with plum character. We started to produce the Bruciato wine in 2002 when we thought that the grapes were not good enough to produce the Guado al Tasso wine.
The top wine of the estate.
The top wine of the estate. But then the wine was very successful, and since then we have devoted one vineyard to the production of Bruciato, and every year we produce this wine, which has been very successful in Italy and in other markets. It's, again, an easy wine. It's not a huge wine, but a wine with a certain complexity, in my opinion, which can age for 5-6 years easily, even more. And it's a wine with a character. I like it very much.
It's very enjoyable. I think I would maybe encourage people to it's quite different from the Sangiovese. So even with the Tignanello, if you want to compare, the Tignanello, which is 80% Sangiovese, with the Bruciato, which is more like 65% Cabernet, fundamentally different. And I guess there's maybe you can tell us if it's a myth or not, Marchese, but apparently there was a local Robin Hood character from the Bolgheri area named Scalabrone, which also happens to be the name of the rosé produced at Guado al Tasso, and the fable, as I understand it, is that this forest was burned because the local authorities, I think, thought that Scalabrone and his merry band were hiding out somewhere in the forest. Is there any truth to that?
That's what they say. Okay. I cannot prove it, but it is probably the right story. Yes.
It's a good story, certainly. So yes, the Robin Hood of the Bulgari. Well, why don't we move along and up to the top wine of the Guado al Tasso estate, which is Guado al Tasso. A lot the same varietal composition, but please take us through the stunning Guado al Tasso.
Guado al Tasso, again, it's an historical name, which can be translated the Badger's Ford, because there was a little creek where traditionally that was the name, and so this is the name then of the estate and of this particular wine, which is produced in the foothills, in the inland, more inland than Vermentino, and a little bit further inland compared to the Bruciato. So it's a rocky soil, calcareous. So it gives wine with more backbone and more complexity. This wine is produced with Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, and a little bit of Petit Verdot. This is the blend of this wine. Aged every year in new French oak barrels for approximately 16 months, and then the wine is bottled and kept another year in the bottle before the wine is released. We started to produce Guado al Tasso in 1990, so now we have a rather long story of the wine, and we can also for this wine say that the wine ages very well for a long time.
Spectacularly, I think, and to your earlier point about how these Bordeaux varietals seem to thrive in this area. The blend here is mainly Cabernet, as you said, with next up Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and a little Petit Verdot in that amphitheater with all of these great neighbors that you talked about already, Ornellaia, Sassicaia, et cetera, et cetera. This is just an international phenomenon and a great example of how these varietals thrive in the Bulgari.
The Bulgari appellation is, I think, the smallest appellation of wine in Italy. Very small. But every wine producer would like to have a little vineyard in the Bulgari appellation now. And we are quite lucky because of the family estate, and we have there 300 hectares, and we are the largest actually wine producers in the Bulgari appellation, so we are quite lucky.
Not to mention its scenic views of the Tyrrhenian Sea. It's very, very, very picturesque and just one of the most beautiful places in all of Italy, with great weather, great place to grow grapes, and as you said, the Vermentino growing below on the sandy soils and the international varietals up
Absolutely.
on the shelf. So thank you for that. That is just spectacular wine. So let's leave Italy and come back to Napa Valley, to the Antica Napa Valley estate. You know, it's clear to me that you know, you've had a fascination with Cabernet Sauvignon. It's been almost 30 years since you came to California in pursuit of Napa Valley excellence. What drew your interest here, and why did you think there was great potential for growing grapes here in Napa Valley and up on Atlas Peak?
Well, I must say I have always admired the wine produced in Napa Valley, and I've always admired also the historical winemakers of Napa Valley, with their desire always to try to produce better wines and always in search of excellence in wines in this part of the world. So it was very influential for me, all this, also this attitude and this. But when in 1985 I was looking around in the Napa Valley, and I had the opportunity to see what now is Antica. At that time it was called Atlas Peak Vineyard. I immediately fell in love with that place because, I don't know, in a way I felt at home. The elevation, the rocky soil, the wilderness of the area. I really fell in love, and I thought that could be a great area to produce very high quality wines. And since then, you know, I have been part of the development of what was at the beginning almost a virgin land. And so it was a very exciting project, and I really consider myself to be very lucky to have this great estate now here in Napa Valley.
It is a spectacular estate, and now that you mention it, it does have some, with its hilly exposure, it does have some similarity to the hills of Tuscany. Glenn, you have been involved with Antica Napa Valley. I think you put the first vine into the ground on this property, so you've been part of it since 1985. For you, what makes Antica Napa Valley and the site where the grapes are planted, what makes it so unique?
Well, I would start with just our general location. For Antica, first of all, Antica means Antinori, California. That's the symbolism of Antica. But we're located in the Atlas Peak district of Napa Valley. And for Napa Valley, we're framed by two mountain ranges. On the west side, we have the Mayacamas, and then on the east side, we have the Vaca mountain range. And for Antica, we are on the east side, so we're high up in the mountains. Our vineyards are up to 1,800 feet in elevation, and the soils are very volcanic in nature. So for Cabernet Sauvignon, a combination of the altitude with the warm days and cool nights, we're generally above the fog layer. This morning was a good example of that. We looked down into Napa Valley, and the coastal fog was blanketing Napa Valley. But for us up at Antica, we were in the beautiful sunshine, which is fantastic this time of year to ripen the grapes. So I think location is so important, and I think earlier Piero was always talking about location of some of the wine estates that Antinori has in Tuscany, and we think what we have here in the Napa Valley is a very special place. I think one of the most beautiful places that there is in Napa Valley, and for sure a great place to grow wine grapes.
Without a doubt. Can people visit Antica Napa Valley? Is it possible to visit?
Because we are up in the mountains, the road to get to Antica is a dead-end road. So we're not on the main Silverado Trail or the Highway 29 that's most of you are familiar with. But we are open to the public by appointment. So either go onto our website, you can book an appointment on the website, or give us a call, and we'd be happy to have people come and visit us.
A stunning visit that I highly recommend. As we mentioned before, we're coming to you from Napa Valley, and here in California, they're in the middle of a pretty serious drought. What effect is the drought having on the vineyards at Antica Napa Valley up on Atlas Peak?
In some ways, we're quite lucky because here in the mountains of Napa Valley, our average rainfall is about 39 inches a year. And this year, even though California has been in this drought situation, we had about 30 inches. So not 100% of our average, but a significant part of our average rainfall. And one of the big investments that we made when we purchased the land back in 1985-86 is we were able to take water rights from the state of California. So on our property we have a lake, we call it Lake Atlas, that we actually collect the rainwater during the winter months and then store it for use during the summer months. And so it's one of the great assets, one of the great natural resources that we have here. Even though California for sure is in a terrible situation with the drought, we feel quite fortunate by our location on top of Atlas Peak.
And I think that Lake Atlas also doubles maybe as a little bass fishing pond. Perhaps your grandson, Marchese, perhaps Nicolo, is fishing for bass in it right now. Just very quickly on the Antica Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, it is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. For me, it's just so aromatic with both red and black fruits, so agreeable to the palate, so indicative of Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. It's just a beautiful wine. So congratulations on your stewardship of this great vineyard. And we were talking before the broadcast today about the ongoing year-over-year improvements that are being made. So the future. The wine itself is spectacular, but the future is very bright for the wines of Antica and Napa Valley as well. We're coming near to the end of our broadcast, but Marchese, just wanted to come back to you for a moment and ask you to tell us a little bit about the next generation of leadership for Antinori. Your three daughters, the 26th generation, are all heavily involved in the business. Can you tell us a little bit about what leadership from the 26th generation is going to look like?
Well, I'm very lucky because I have three wonderful daughters, and I don't know, it's difficult for me to describe their ability or whatever. What I can say, and I'm very glad to say what they have is all three have a great passion for what they are doing. They love their business, and I think that passion in our type of business is indispensable to produce wine. At least to produce great wines, I think you really need passion, and that's more important than a university degree or a master in our type of business.
Yes, I agree.
And I have three daughters, but I now have also 6 grandchildren, and 2 of them are already very close to be able to join the company, and they are having an experience in another company, but very soon I think they will join the company. So I think that the continuity is guaranteed, and this is something which I'm very pleased to, also because having such a long tradition, we would like to feel, and I would like to feel, and I feel that there will be another, maybe 600 years ahead of us.
Huh. And didn't another grandson just arrive in the past couple of weeks?
Absolutely. So that's the 6th.
Wow. Congratulations. Well, and thank you. I think we have time for just a last couple of questions. Some good ones have come in. Elizabeth from the Arden, California store asks, Marchese, what do you eat and drink on a typical Friday night?
On a typical Friday night, I normally eat pasta because that goes without saying for us, and also good branzino, fish, because on Friday in Italy it's the day where we normally eat fish, historically. And so I love fish, and there is an Italian fish called branzino, which is a wonderful fish which you can eat grilled or even steamed, and I love it, and so normally this is my Friday night dinner.
And what sort of pasta? I know that when I made a tour of the properties in Italy, it was a contest to see which of the properties produced the best carbonara, which I'm partial to, but what sort of pasta would you have as the primi in advance of your branzino? What do you prefer in the pasta world?
In this period of the year, when it's starting to be warm, I like it with pasta with different type of vegetables with my pasta.
Like a pasta
Tomatoes,
primavera sort of?
Primavera.
Ah,
so,
see.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is a good time for pasta primavera and maybe a little of the Guado al Tasso Vermentino.
Vermentino, perfect.
So we are just a minute or so away from concluding our broadcast. Last question coming in from Kyle Kendrick. No specific store here, but what are some of the most memorable vintages over the course of your career? Those that stand out as spectacular in your memory.
I mean, in terms of our wines that we produce, maybe the most memorable for me was the Chianti Classico 1967, because that was my first vintage under my responsibility. And I was lucky enough because it was a very good vintage, and so I think I made a good wine in '67, and sometimes I continue to open a bottle from time to time, and the wine is still very good. And then even emotionally for me, it's a very important wine.
Wow.
But apart that, then also more recent vintages like, for instance, 2004 vintage, which was a great vintage in Tuscany. 2010 and 11, both good vintages, especially for Tignanello. 2011,
Yes.
for me, it's one of the
Yes.
best vintages. And so these are the vintages that, for me, for various reasons, are important.
Well, it would be my honor. I don't want to be presumptuous, but tasting the 67 with you at some point would be spectacular. So, Marchese Piero, thank you so much for being with us today, being with our friends at Total Wine and More. Just such a treat for you to be here and to share all of the history and walk us through these wines. So, thank you so much. Glenn Salva, thank you so much for joining us and your long-time stewardship and participation of Antica and all things Napa Valley. And thanks to you, our great Total Wine and More customers. Please enjoy these Antinori wines and enjoy your summer. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again.